The New York Times and NBC, Mercedes and Simon, right now are reporting that President Trump has removed Anthony Scaramucci as his communications director. We are working to confirm that here at Fox News. I hear you laughing, but I have to say, you know, earlier, Mercedes, we were talking on Outnumbered, and we have been all day long as this has been making news on Fox News, with a new person in charge at the White House Chief of Staff, General John Kelly, coming over from the Department of Homeland Security. He would want to have control of his staff. We don't know if this has anything to do to play with Anthony Scaramucci, but we do know that Scaramucci made it very clear last week he would report only to the president.
Well, Harris, it's very clear that John Kelly's coming in with a very new style of leadership. And I think it's very important for John Kelly to make sure he puts people that he feels comfortable working with. And I think that's where you see the difference, where President Trump is going to respect one of his colleagues, someone who actually is closer to his age, someone who he doesn't view as a staffer, but someone who he views as a senior advisor, someone he can trust. And so John Kelly's going to have to be the one to make this call, as he's going to make some significant changes, I think, in that West Wing and across the board.
Having, you know, the history that we do, Simon, recently of just the last 14 or 15 days or so, one thing that Anthony Scaramucci did that was very positive for this president was to lay down the law about how leaks from the White House will not be tolerated, to lay down the law that he loves this president and that this president needs a shoring up and people to have his back.
Yeah, look, I think that I don't know that Secretary Kelly, or now Chief of Staff Kelly, is going to be able to get rid of the chaos of the way that Trump operates. But one thing he can do, I think, is fight very hard to restore the dignity of the office itself. And I think that Scaramucci's comments last week, which were arguably the most disgusting things ever said on the record by any spokesperson of any White House in the modern era of American politics, they were offensive. I mean, my kids read them, right? My teenage kids read the language that he used and asked me about it at dinner, you know, the other night. And I think that Secretary Kelly has an incredible opportunity to help Donald Trump become a dignified, thoughtful leader, which is what I think everyone in both parties wants, that, right? I think we're all a little disappointed with the way that he's conducted himself. Hopefully that's one of the first things that we're going to see, and I think Scaramucci's departure is a step in the right direction.
You know,
gear the ship in the right direction.
You know, part of the challenge for this president, though, has been getting out his message. And now you've seen a couple of communications directors leave in staccato fashion. So you had Dubke, and now you've had Scaramucci, and now we want to go to our John Roberts because we're able to confirm some of this. Simon Rosenberg, Mercedes Schlapp, thank you very much. John Roberts, you're outside the White House, obviously. What have you been able to learn?
Yeah, this comes as a surprise to a lot of people, because Anthony Scaramucci was only recently installed as the White House communications director at the behest of President Trump and over the protestations of both Steve Bannon and Reince Priebus. And we saw what happened last week as a result of the lingering friction between Anthony Scaramucci and Reince Priebus, with Priebus departing late on Thursday. Well, now Anthony Scaramucci is departing as the White House communications director. Outside sources have confirmed what we already knew through other sources, that John Kelly, who is the new incoming chief of staff, requested to kind of clear the decks. And Scaramucci, it looks like, is now going to go back to the Export-Import Bank, where he was working before. He was also in line to be the ambassador to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development in Paris. We don't know if that nomination will now go ahead, but we do know that he's going back to the Export-Import Bank. What we do not know, and this remains an open question, we hope to find out soon, is does this mean that Sean Spicer is going to stay? You know, the whole hierarchy of the communications shop at the White House, Harris, was changing. Sean Spicer was going to be elevated to a position of a deputy chief of staff, overseeing both the press secretary and the communications director. When Scaramucci came in a week ago Friday, for that meeting, he told the president that he did not want to report to Sean Spicer. And Sean Spicer saw this as being an untenable situation. where he didn't want to be sort of the underling in the communication shop after being with the president so long. So he tendered his resignation to sort of, as he put it, quote, clear the decks so the president could bring in his own team. But now that John Kelly has come in, we have yet another clearing of the decks. So Anthony Scaramucci, whose tenure lasted about 10 days, is out as the communications director, going back to the Export-Import Bank. And again, we will check to see if he will still be in line for that nomination to be ambassador to the OECD, and whether or not Sean Spicer will depart the White House, as was planned for probably about the 15th of August. I talked to him earlier today. He was sort of going to coordinate his departure with some renovations that are taking place in the West Wing of the White House at the end of this week. But all of that may have changed. I'll tell you that I was outside his office, and he was behind the desk on the computer as the rest of the staff were gathered around him. So his position here at the White House still very prominent. It's likely he wouldn't continue to be press secretary. Sarah Huckabee Sanders has been named the press secretary, but Spicer could well stay on as the communications director in the position that he held before Scaramucci came in. It's a very, shall we say, fluid situation, Harris, here at the White House, as we're trying to figure out what all of these moves might mean in the short term and in the long term.